Hello and welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled to be guiding you through today's topic. We are going to uncover exactly how primary particles in the ground bind together into a continuous spatial network to dictate soil behavior. We're literally looking at the foundations beneath our feet. Okay, let's dive right into our agenda. Today, we are covering defining soil structure, structure types, classes and grades, importance and management, linear extensibility, and finally, the soil crusting phenomenon.
Section 1, Defining Soil Structure. Studying the properties of isolated soil separates just isn't enough to understand how the composite soil body actually behaves. We really have to understand the entire soil matrix itself. That brings us to our core definition. Soil structure denotes the size, shape, and arrangement of primary particles, secondary particles, and the voids or spaces separating them. Basically, it's how all these aggregates and voids combine into definite patterns out there under actual field conditions.
Now, those primary particles I just mentioned, they don't exist on their own. They bind together with varying degrees of tenacity into much larger units. We call these naturally occurring semi-permanent clusters PEDs. And the binding forces inside a PED are significantly stronger than the forces between adjacent aggregates.
It's also super important to differentiate a PED from a clod. While a PED is a natural aggregate, a clod is a coherent mass of soil broken into a specific shape by artificial means. Tillage is a perfect example of how clods are artificially created. Just to round out our definitions, a fragment is simply a broken PED. A concretion, though, is a coherent mass formed inside the soil when certain chemicals dissolved in percolating waters precipitate out. And an interesting fact, concretions are usually quite small. They look a lot like shotgun lead pellets. Section 2, Structure Types. When we classify soil structure out in the field, we initially look at the geometric shape and the spatial arrangement of those PEDs we just talked about. Broadly speaking, aggregates divide into two main camps, simple and compound. In a simple structure, natural cleavage planes are either totally absent or just indistinct. This includes single-grain structures in sandy soils or massive, high-bulk density structures found in paddy soils. Compound structures, on the other hand, feature highly distinct natural cleavage planes. A fascinating example of a specific simple structure is the vesicular, or honeycomb structure. It's essentially a massive or loose aggregate of nodular ferruginous mass. You'll typically see this specific formation occurring in laterites. Let's look at compound structures, where those cleavage planes are distinct. First up, spheroidal PEDs. These are small, rounded, loosely packed PEDs. If they're porous, we call it a crumb structure. If they are less porous, it's granular. Then we have block-like structures, which are irregular, roughly cube-like, and can be angular or subangular. Finally, prism-like structures. These are vertically oriented, pillar-like PEDs. If the pillars have distinct rounded tops, they are columnar, but if the tops are relatively angular and horizontally flat, they're called prismatic. Another major compound type is the platy structure, which consists of relatively thin horizontal PEDs or plates. We call the thicker units platy and the much thinner ones laminar. These platy types are often inherited directly from parent materials, especially those laid down by water or ice, though they can definitely be created artificially when heavy machinery compacts clayey soils. Section 3, Classes and Grades. If type tells us the shape, class tells us the size of the PEDs, and grade determines their distinctness and durability. It is really insightful to look at the precise size mapping across these different structure types. The primary structural types are divided into 5 subclasses based entirely on PED diameter in millimeters. For instance, a very fine granular or platy PED is less than 1 millimeter, but a very fine prismatic PED can be up to 10 millimeters. Also, keep in mind that the terms thin and thick are used exclusively for the platy type, while fine and coarse apply to all the other structural types. Beyond just size, we evaluate grade, which is basically the durability of the individual PEDs. It starts at structureless or simple, meaning no observable aggregation or line of cleavage, kind of like sand dune areas. Then we move up to weak. These are poorly formed, indistinct PEDs that just break into a mix of broken PEDs and unaggregated material. Moderate PEDs are moderately well-developed, making them fairly durable and distinct. And finally, strong refers to very well-formed PEDs that are quite durable and distinct. Section 4. Importance and Management. Okay, so we understand the soil matrix, but why does it actually matter? let's talk about the absolutely crucial role this plays in cultivated lands. Soil structure is paramount because it directly dictates the amount and nature of porosity in the soil. It governs the permeability of both water and air. Structure influences water holding capacity, overall soil-water relationships, and microorganism growth. So ultimately, this directly impacts soil drainage and exactly how available plant nutrients are. Because it's so important, maintaining and improving soil structure is a massive challenge in cultivated lands. Management principles focus heavily on mitigating aggregate destruction. That means only tilling soils at optimum moisture conditions to ensure the least possible destruction. It also means utilizing minimum tillage to stop the loss of aggregate stabilizing organic substances. You can also use organic mulches to buffer the beating action of rain. Heavily incorporate crop residues and animal manures to stabilize aggregates, and use green manuring, suitable cropping systems, or even synthetic organic soil conditioners. Section 5. Linear extensibility. Let's see how this ties into measuring expansiveness using the coefficient of linear extensibility, or COL. The expansiveness of a soil can actually be quantified with this formula. You take the length of a bar-shaped soil when moistened to its plastic limit, subtract its length when air-dried, divide that by the dry length, and then multiply by 100. If you get a value greater than 0.03, it points to black soils containing considerable expandable smectite minerals. If it's greater than 0.09, you are definitely looking at vertisols. Section 6. Soil crusting phenomenon. Now let's shift to a specific, very challenging issue associated with the deterioration of soil structure. Soil crusting happens when natural aggregates break and disperse from the sheer impact of raindrops, which is then followed by rapid drying from the sun's radiant energy. When rain hits exposed dry soil, the aggregates disintegrate. Finer clay particles actually move down with infiltrating water and immediately clog the pores right beneath the surface, completely sealing it. Later, as it starts to dry, surface tension forces pull the soil particles together into a strong, dense layer, and this crust is invariably about 5 millimeters thick. Several specific soil factors are associated with severe crusting: low organic matter, high silt, and high exchangeable sodium. Interestingly enough, crust thickness actually increases with an increase in clay content, but the type of clay matters. Montmorillonite clay forms thick, hard crusts, while kaolinite clay forms thin crusts. The effects of all this are pretty detrimental. Crusting largely dictates the crop stand because it physically restricts the emergence and early growth of seedlings. It causes high bulk density, very low non-capillary pores, low hydraulic conductivity, poor aeration, high penetration resistance, and high water runoff. Luckily, we have direct management solutions to control or break up this crust. We can minimize its formation through surface mulches, adding organic matter, or planting close-growing crops and grasses to keep the soil covered. You can also apply SSP, gypsum, or artificial conditioners. Crucially, doing a light tillage when the soil is still moist will break up that crust before it has a chance to harden. Deep plowing, frequent intercultivation, and crop residual recycling technology are all highly effective tools here.
So let's leave off with a final thought. If the sheer impact of mere raindrops on an exposed dry surface is enough to disintegrate these semi-permanent aggregates and seal off the vital pores beneath them, how absolutely crucial are our tillage choices and organic management in preserving this delicate soil matrix? It really highlights just how fragile yet incredibly vital proper soil structure management is. Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the ground beneath your feet.